Oh, and we're recording this time, Mark, right?
Yes, we are recording it this time.
Apologies, last time we didn't do it. Someone asked and we couldn't give them the recording.
Okay, so here are the questions we got this week. As I said, I was just trying to work through that open exchange rate one. I'm not sure.
Hey, do you want to paste the question in the chat so that everyone can read them? Is that possible, or does that?
Oh, hang on. Maybe I should just share my screen, shouldn't I?
Oh no, you're so beautiful, Mark. We don't want to see your screen. We want to see you.
1 second.
I'm in Germany right now, and I already had a beer. It's evening, so I apologize for any wrongdoings I'm about to do. So.
There we go. So we had 3 questions, and unfortunately one of them I'm simply going to say is out of scope for this session, which is what do you do about JSON in older releases of the database? You know, the scope of this JSON in the database is the functionality that we introduced starting with release 12.102.
We could give people a hint that there is JSON Apex or Apex JSON package.
That was what I was about to say. There is an Apex JSON package that the Apex guys introduced in one of the later releases of Apex that has some useful functionality, but it's not something we cover in this session. And so I'm afraid, you know, you're somewhat on your own. We would strongly recommend that you upgrade to 12.102 or later, where you will get a lot of very useful functionality and probably significantly more performant than you would get using either third-party products that were around that support the older version of the database. What was that open source thing too that some people like, Beda?
PL-JSON, was it called PL-JSON?
PL-JSON, that was it.
Right.
So that's a package you could look at, but that's not Oracle supported. And then there is the Apex JSON functionality that is Oracle supported. It's part of Apex, and I'm not sure which database releases it can be installed in, but certainly it can be restored in some of the versions of 11.
It works in 11. I don't know if it works in 10, but certainly in 11.
Yeah.
But those are all PL SQL implementation, both Apex JSON and PL JSON. So they come with some performance, slower performance than our C-based built-in.
The second question, the first question here, how do I display? I'm not sure I understand this question at all. Is the person who asked it on the line? Could they clarify it?
Maybe there is on mute. Alok Verma. Let's see at the participant list. But I don't see an Alok there.
Yeah, so that one, I'm afraid I'm not really sure I understand what they're asking. So the other one I was just trying to work through, which I don't know if Darren J is on the line. But that was the other question. I was just trying to work the example now, and for some reason, let me just see if this works. So I'm getting 170 keys, but then I'm getting no rows selected. Why is that? What have I done wrong in my logic? I mean, basically, the problem with this one is it's quite an interesting little problem. And if we look at the format of the file, the gentleman's asking how can he process this file using our JSON capabilities. And what we see here is the file is structured in a somewhat unusual manner for a JSON file. I would argue that rates should have been an array with a set of objects inside it. But what we actually have, if you look carefully, is that rates is an object with a set of key value pairs inside it. And the keys are effectively data items. They're not meaningful names for the object. They are Yeah, okay, Dennis is here. Yeah, I'll take that other question that came back about the.
Yeah, Dennis has added stuff
Yeah.
to the question.
Yeah. Anyway, we'll come back to that one in just a second. I would argue that this should have been an array with, an object inside it that should have had a, currency name, currency exchange rate, but it isn't. It's effectively a name value pair model where somebody has used the name as the key name, which gives us at the moment a little bit of heartache. It's something we're aware that we need to address, but there's nothing in our native SQL functionality that will let us process that data, because we assume that we're going to know the names of the keys in advance. So we'll have to drop back to PL SQL. That's okay. So the way I would approach this is I would use a table function if I want to get it into something that I can then query in SQL. And in order to do that, first I'm going to have to create a couple of object types. And the first object type I'm creating defines effectively my row. So what I'm going to generate from that object with all those exchange rates in it is a set of rows, which will tell me the epoch, which is the timestamp on the file, the base currency, which is the currency I'm coming from. And that information, if you look, is in what is effectively the header for the file. You can see it here. And then it's going to generate one row from each one of the rates. And in order to process, in order to generate those rows, I need to then create a table type based on that object type that is my row. So there's my table record. And now I can create a pipeline function which will process that table. And it returns the table type that we created. And I'm going to use our PL SQL JSON capabilities to process the file, in particular to deal with that object where I need to know the names of the keys in order to get to the values. And so basically what I'm going to set up is I'm going to pass in my document, and I am going to construct a JSON object key from that document, which I'm going to call vJSON. I'm then going to get the rates object using the get function. So I invoke the get function on the JSON, on the vJSON object, and I return a JSON object T, which now gives me that subset of the record of the JSON document here. And I'm then going to extract a set of keys, and I'm outputting the number of keys, and then I'm iterating over the set of keys, and I should be piping out an instance of the X-rate record for each row or for each key. But for some reason I'm getting no rows, so I'm doing something wrong here. So let me just take a quick look at the pipe function and what am I doing wrong. I don't write these very often, so and Connor, if you're on the line and can spot it, feel free to pipe in. If that wasn't too bad of a pun. Now, there was while I'm looking at this, I know it's something I've done really stupid.
What happens if you run it? You just get null rows, or you don't get
no rows back. Yeah.
new rows.
I think if that new statement doesn't need to be there. 1 second.
And the get keys, so the loop
Get keys is returning the right number of rows.
I see. And the loop iterates over it, right? V keys count. If you could have put a DBMS output in the loop.
That's what I'm going to do next. I just want to see whether it's something as silly as.
Right. So you got 170 keys, but no rows selected. Let's put a DBMS print line in the loop, put line. Oh, you put the put line, the currency, yeah, exactly. Yeah. Keys. VJSON. What a VJ? 1 second, VJSON. Okay. What happened?
You didn't go into the loop by the look of it. What did I do wrong? This is annoying. Well, I less than keys dot count.
What is I? I is 0.
No, I is not 0. Well spotted. It's just 1, isn't it? And it's less than an equal.
Right. I think it's 1 based. Yes.
Checking.
Oh, it's all the same. Didn't we need to? Well,
Yeah.
let's look at some other currency. But I has to be, you probably have to increment I plus plus.
Yeah. I think what I actually meant to do was this. Sorry, because I copied some code from something else.
Luckily, everyone is muted, so we don't hear them laughing.
I in 1, 2 V keys dot count.
That's not TL SQL.
That's not.
That's 4.
Maybe 4?
Yeah, 4. Sorry. I'm writing too many different languages these days. 4 I am. That's it, isn't it?
Remove the parentheses.
That's a valid PL SQL loop, isn't it?
No, the normally there's no parentheses.
I here.
You don't. I'm not sure if you need the parentheses.
The X rates dot get number V keys of I. Do I have the right number of closing parens? No, I need one more. Let's try that. Coding live, never fun. 13.
Remove the parentheses around the 4 header. The I in 1 to X. No parentheses.
Line 99.
Line 65.
Yeah, 65. It's 65. You want to go back to where it's editable? 65.
Oh.
You can't edit it there. This is not your edit window, right? 65. This parentheses is, yeah. Right. Well, let's give it another try. But I think people get the idea here that with PL SQL you have constructs to, in this case, extract all the keys and then iterate over the keys using a simple for loop. And the other construct here is the table function, which should return you all these things as separate rows. Let's see if this works.
Help if I edited the source file, not the log file.
So is the person who's asked the question, is the person...
Okay, so we've got the currencies, but we're not getting...
There you go. There,
no, that's the output, isn't it? There we go.
Right.
Outputs, let's get rid of the...
There you go. Yoo-hoo!
And that, I think, is the answer, is it not?
Do you want to copy and paste this to the chat? So the person who's asked the question, is that person online?
3.67316. 3.67318. Sorry, did I read that wrong?
Looks good.
How many digits do we have in the file? 1, 2, 3, 6. 6. Okay, so yeah, so I've got a rounding error. That's easy to fix. That's just this guy. There we go. So basically what we have now is a table function that returns us the rows. So what is it doing here? It gets the contents of the rates object. It extracts the key from the rate. It extracts the set of keys from the rates object. And then it iterates over those keys, extracting the exchange rate for each one of the key value, the key names that it found. And then it generates a row of this X rate record containing the value of the timestamp, the value of the base, and the name of the key that we get from the keys array, and the number associated with that key. And now I have the table function. I can pass in my JSON document, and I get back 170 rows. Oh, precision is too large. Okay, so I need to fix my data type again. Let's just do that. We'll make this a 1510. See if that one works. And we get back 170 rows for our currency exchanges. So as I said, I don't know if the gentleman who asked the question is on the
doesn't seem so
now, but that is your solution, at least.
This was asked by Beda, and I mean, maybe we could
come back to the chat. Where my meeting controls go. chat. Yeah, thanks, Judith. So Dennis asked about, will this be in the next release of XE? My hands are somewhat tied in terms of talking about the next release of XE because it's not yet a released product. However, we have never produced a version of XE where any of the development features have not been present, and I think you can assume that that will continue to be the case. So hopefully that indirectly answers your question without me getting in trouble with Oracle Legal. Any other questions?
Do you know when the next XE is supposed to be released?
You are all on mute, so I'm going to... no way I can unmute you all. I know I can mute you all. I have to unmute you all.
Can you hear me, Mark? Mark?
Beda, you raised your hand.
Yeah, can you hear me? Hello?
Beda?
Yes, can you hear me?
Why has everybody gone silent? There we go. There we go. Okay, I can hear you.
Mark, can you hear me?
Yes.
Good, 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 good. Okay. Do you know when XE is coming out? When it's supposed to release the next XE?
I'm not sure if I have those dates available.
I see, yeah.
Good. I know it's being actively worked on. Beyond that, you know, all of the on-premise dates are later in the year.
I see. Got it.
But of course, if people want to play with this stuff now, it is available in the Oracle Cloud if you have an Oracle Cloud account.
We hear a lot of typing. Maybe you guys who could mute your line? Or was this you, Mark, hacking the keyboard?
No, it's not me. My hands are here.
Yeah, it sounds like someone chopping wood or so.
Somebody with a good old-fashioned mechanical keyboard by the sound of it.
Well, do we have more questions here? There's one new message. What is it? Audio is good. Sorry, me. Okay, I'll find any more questions. So we got a few people on the line here.
Unmute all. There we are. That's where it is. Okay, so if anybody's got a question, your mics are now live.
You can also, if you prefer writing the question, you can also write it into the chat. Oh yeah, when is it expected to have an Oracle native type like XML type that's asked for?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. The advantage of having a native type. Now when we first designed XML type, and I'm going to mute everyone again while I'm talking. I'll unmute you all at the once I've finished. You know, there were several advantages to having an XML type. You know, in particular, it made it easier for tools and things to understand that, you know, the content of data was XML. However, it also caused a number of problems. You know, for those of you who are around, you know, since 9.2 days, it took us introducing a new type into a database is a very complex process. And it takes a long, long time to get all the moving parts in the database working with a new data type. And it took us several releases. I really, you know, it's really 11.2 before we had all of what we termed the operational completeness. That was, you know, does XML type work with feature X of the database? And, you know, depending on the feature, it took a long, long time for the answer to be to be yes, these features do work with XML type. So when we started designing JSON, one of the decisions we took was, let's not invent another new data type and give ourselves, 2 or 3 releases of headaches to get everything working with JSON. Because we found with the fact that stuff didn't work with XML type, was actually quite an impediment to people using the functionality. So when we started doing JSON, we said, let's just use the existing data types. I mean, JSON really is just text. So let's use blob, clob, and varchar 2, and we'll deal with the JSONless problem a different way through the check constraints. So we really have no plans at the moment to introduce a JSON data type, period. We may introduce something. We're kicking around the idea of a pseudo type. We'll see what comes of that. But it would not be like inventing an XML type that was a completely new data type in its own right. It might be some kind of syntactic sugar that at least in certain circumstances allows it to look like it's a JSON data type. But even that has challenges because no one's ever done that before. And so we need to be very sure that, there are no untoward side effects of doing even that amount, even that side. So for the moment, Catherine, your answer is no, we won't be having a JSON data type. And, there were reasons that decision was made. Is there anything that is there a particular reason why you think one would be useful? I'm going to unmute you all now.
Yeah. Benefit. I want to add a little bit to what you said, Mark, just a little bit. So we make use of the check constraint that you add on a varchar lob or blob column. And so the database knows when it sees a varchar result that this is JSON. So for example, if you do JSON generation, it knows when to put in parentheses around, the double quotes around something. And all that information now goes all the way to the client. So if you, for example, have Java, you can ask the result set metadata if a varchar or a lob result is JSON. So there is a is clob JSON or something like this function that you can invoke. So we're going to work on what Mark called syntactic sugar. Those are ease of use features which make it easier for you to deal with a JSON. And I think this will get you to 95% of what a type would give you, maybe even 100%. So I think all the stuff that people are asking for, if they think they need a type, this is kind of stuff that we're going to give you without giving you a new data type. A lot of hacking again. So there's benefit of having a JSON data type is having it in a strict, structured way. That question I don't understand from Dennis Savenko. Do you understand that, Mark? So, I mean, the moment you put an isJSON check constraint on the stuff on a varchar, you can't insert something that is not JSON. So,
Sorry, could whoever's on their own phone mute themselves, please? And I mean, Catherine, you're coming about XQuery. I mean, JSON, another thing that XQuery is a wonderfully, wonderfully well thought out product. It's incredibly powerful, and 95% of it no one ever uses. So one of the things about XQuery is that we're not looking at trying to build a JSON query language that has the complexity of XQuery inside it. We took what we thought were the good parts of XQuery, basically XPath, and we built a JSON path language around that. And by doing that, we were able to make sure that by keeping it simple, it makes it much easier to optimize and ensure that the JSON processing we do operates very, very efficiently inside the database. So, you know, I'm not sure how XQuery applies to having a data type or not. It does, you know, in JSON, we could, you know, we can make JSON path as complex as we feel we need to without having a JSON data type. The two are orthogonal to each other, but there are no plans at the moment to produce a complex language like XQuery for JSON processing. What we are looking at doing is adding some update capabilities for JSON, and that's something that, you know, we were giving you a path-based update capability at some point in the future. There's also a question about using SQL XML. There are in 12.2 and enhanced in 18.1s a set of JSON operators in SQL that are almost identical in scope to the XML generation operators that you sound like you're familiar with. So if you're wanting to generate JSON from your relational data, you need to look at things like JSON object, JSON array, JSON object ag, and JSON array ag. Those functions make it very easy to generate JSON documents from a SQL statement in the way that things like XML element, XML attribute, XML ag make it easy to generate an XML document from your relational data. Beda, there's a question here that you might want to allude to about comparing.
Yeah, I just you unmuted me. I just replied to that in the chat that we've added a JSON equal operator, which does exactly that. It allows you to do a deep equals comparison, especially for JSON objects. The ordering of the key value pairs doesn't really matter. So if you have an object which is like first name Mark, last name Drake, or those key values in a different order, that wouldn't matter. And JSON equal is exactly doing that. It allows you to do this. There is a question from Lloyd. What other ways are there to update a specific key value pair found within JSON string other than reading the entire JSON, tweaking the specific key value pair, and then writing the entire JSON back to the column? One thing we've seen, so we don't have a JSON update or JSON transform operator yet. What you can do now is to use the PL SQL object types that Mark has shown, where you parse the JSON and then you can move to certain fields, check if fields exist, or check if values are there or not, and then update the JSON and do it on the database side. So you don't have to ship it all to the client and modify it there. Do you want to add to that, Mark?
No, I think you've got that pretty much covered. There are some examples of that on our live SQL.
Yes. I mean, we know that we're a bit weak in that, and we work on that. As Mark said, using path expressions to specify. There's always the case where the modifications are so complex that you can't do it in a declarative way, and you need to do it procedural. And this is why we've decided to do that first. So with PL SQL, you can program the changes that you want. Any complex business logic is possible, and the declarative way comes later. Yeah, good. Any more questions here in this one? In future releases, this is a question by Sagar Dua. In future releases, any possibility of storing property graph data introduced in RDBMS 12.2 in JSON format? I have to admit, I'm not that familiar with what format the graph data is. So is this actually already JSON data, or is this another representation that you want to get converted into JSON data? That's a question to Sagar. Are you familiar with this, Mark? The
No,
12.
I'm not. I've not seen the property graph stuff in 12.2 at all.
Yeah, I mean, this is representation converted to JSON data. So is the user converting this, or is this, I mean, I know these, what's it called, these OWL RDF graphs, but I'm not sure if there's RDF in JSON. I mean, the moment you have data in JSON format, you can store it and you can query it. You can also use it for joins. I mean, I would assume that if it's graph data, you would have to do a lot of joins or self joins in order to traverse these graphs. I don't know. I mean, we have a general purpose JSON storage and query engine. So if your JSON represents graph data, you should be able to query it. But we have not added any graph-specific operations. Also in JSON, there is nothing like a link or a ref. Like in XML, you had ID ref, something like this. Something like that does not exist in JSON. So those, you would have to extract these values using JSON value or JSON table, and then perform joins in SQL in order to navigate to whatever a value points to. I hope that this answers your question. If not, you need to ask more or give a bit of more background regarding your question. There's another question from Dennis. Is there a special kind of indexing on JSON columns, which are varchars, blobs, and clubs actually, to index a particular property? For example, when I need to find all the values with the value red of the property color in Postgres SQL, there's vodka indexes. Are they really called vodka? Vodka indexes? Cool. So yes, we do have an index.
Programs for beer, not vodka.
Yeah. Or the beer indexes, exactly. Yes, you can extract a value from your JSON data and store it or index it in a functional B-tree index or bitmap index. Or we have the JSON search index, which is an index all approach, which stores your values in an inverted list. So you don't have to specify which fields you want to index. It's indexing all the values and then using an inverted list approach to find these values, to find the relevant values. But I don't know if what corresponds to a vodka index. I would have to do some research there.
The gin index is a variant of the text index. I'm not familiar with the vodka index, so I think it's related.
Yes, I mean, typically it's either B-tree or it's inverted lists, and we have both. Yeah. Vodka index, I will read this up.
Yes, Jeff is well aware of the beer indexing and the beer programming paradigm.
Okay, Zagar just searched and found we can store graph representation in JSON, yeah. You can also use, I mean, the spatial team has done some extensions that you can convert this spatial information. I think graph and spatial is somewhat the same team, but I was only involved in the spatial feature. You can convert the GeoJSON, that's a standard for points and lines and like geographic information in JSON format and map this to and from the SDO geometry types. So you can write JSON value returning SDO geometry and then populate the spatial index with that, for example.
Anybody else?
Yeah, there's Dennis writes something about the JSON-B, like in binary JSON format. We also have a binary JSON format if you have the in-memory option. We call it OSIN. And the benefit of that, I think it's actually superior to JSON-B. JSON-B is still a streaming format. With OSIN, we actually can jump straight to the values that are of interest. So it's kind of a hash table offset approach. Right now, OSIN is only the JSON binary format. It's only available in the in-memory object. So if you have in-memory and you store JSON text in a club or varchar on disk and you enable that table for in-memory, we will actually convert it to a binary JSON format and will be much faster if you do queries over that. Could you please write the name? It's called OSIN.
You won't find much about it though, because we don't document it because it's plumbing. We just tell you that it goes fast.
Internally, yes.
Now, performance is one of those areas where we run afoul of legal. If you remember in the old days of relational databases, there were very carefully orchestrated TPCC, TPCD, TPCH numbers that made sure that when people were comparing performance, everybody was in theory playing on a level playing field and hadn't cooked the books. Unfortunately, there is no such standards for document stores and NoSQL stores. So Oracle Legal basically, refused to let us publish any of our internal numbers that we've done to compare with other vendors. What I will say is a bit like the old Rolls-Royce, years ago, if you asked a Rolls-Royce salesman what the performance of their Rolls-Royce was, what was the 0 to 60 time, or what was the brake horsepower, they will simply tell you, it's sufficient to meet your needs, sir. And I think that's very true of Oracle. We will meet your needs for your NoSQL and document processing. Unless you really are the next Facebook or the next Amazon, it's very unlikely. And even in those cases, we probably could do it. Unless you're one of those kind of customers, it's very unlikely that you can come up with a scenario for using JSON and NoSQL that we will not be able to meet your performance requirements.
Right, and one also has to be clear that you really do an apples-to-apples comparison. We did some performance measurements a while back with a competing product where if you actually wrote to the database, the driver told you that the wrote succeeded once the message hit the network buffer on the client side. So this was before even the data had shipped to the database. It hasn't even reached the server. Obviously, this gives you great latency, but it may also mean that you can lose data. So the moment when we put that product, very, very successful or very, very popular product among developers, I don't say anything more. If you put that product in a write acknowledge mode, where the database had to basically make sure that it wrote the data before it told you it did, then that performance dropped by a lot. And we were actually, better. So keep that in mind if you compare these products. If you can live with losing data, you may not need the Oracle database. But this is not a market that we're particularly interested in. So can't hear anything. Now is everyone muted?
No, I muted the one person who seemed to be generating a lot of background noise.
Okay, good. Yeah.
Okay, are there any other questions? No.
Can you give us what you're working on for that? I could do that. Mark always has to stop me because I don't know all these.
But when legal found
I've
out,
never been educated by legal. These damn lawyers. Let me tell you.
You could, Beda, but when legal found out, you wouldn't be working on it anymore.
Yeah.
So sorry, no. I mean, unfortunately, we're not allowed to talk about futures. I've already pushed the envelope of what we should say in this session.
I think you can guess. I think if you look at the product, and we mentioned a lot of stuff, you can, yeah.
I mean, the first time, if you really want to find out what we're doing next, the answer is come to Open World in October, because that's the first time we're typically allowed to talk about stuff in public.
Mark, what if we do an office session at Open World time that we don't record? Is that considered? Are we then allowed to talk about these things, even if
I don't even want to think about that. I would have to ask the powers that be.
Oh man!
Yeah, this is why they don't let developers out without product managers around.
Yeah. Oh, it's always good. I mean, let's turn around the question. What do you guys think we should be working on? I mean, now you can answer, or you can just type your wish list into the chat here, and we're going to send it to Santa Claus and see. Good. JSON has a cloud service. Are we working on this, Mark? Are we?
Well, I mean, you can already use JSON in the cloud. I mean, because, we are in Exadata Express, we are in DBCS, we are in, all of the current database cloud services. Our functionality is already available. Are there other things we could do? We're certainly discussing that.
A way to update a specific key value pair without using PL SQL. Are we working on that?
That's certainly something on our radar.
Yeah. Looking forward for more integration of JSON with PL SQL. Good point. Yes, not allowed to talk. But maybe you could, what do you mean with more integration, Sagar? This is very broad, general. Maybe you could type 1, 2, 3 pieces that you...
I'll give you some feedback offline, Beda. I mean, we're welcome to take feedback offline.
Of course, yeah.
I mean, our email addresses are fairly easy to get, given our names.
Yeah.
I'd certainly be interested in seeing use cases for the update too, to make sure that we've got everything covered with
right.
what we're whiteboarding at the moment. Okay, well, hang on.
Are there any options to pivot the query results and get a JSON document as a result? Any number of columns.
Can you provide an example of what you do with XML? Oh, are you talking about that there is an XML option on the pivot command, isn't there? Is that what you're referring to?
Yes.
Not actually something we own, but I can certainly check with the guys and suggest it to them.
Great.
Let me also think about that and see if there's anything we can do today, but I don't think there will be. But you can certainly generate a JSON array.
I'm asking about getting one JSON document as a result. That would be JSON array ag, maybe, right?
We'll have to look at what the pivot.
Yeah.
If you can, yeah, I'll have to look at the pivot in more detail. They did the work for XML, so we didn't get involved in it. I'll have to look at that and see if there's anything we can do with what we have today, or whether it will need more work. In which case, we'll see, get it on their list.
So it's a query result which has different number of columns. What if you do a JSON object of star of that? Then you have a JSON object for each row, and then you turn that into an array ag. I don't know. Is this what's...
We'll get back to you on that one. That would have been an interesting question to have in advance, and then we could have had the answer. Maybe we'll start the next session with that question. If we have something useful to say.
I have one more question. Maybe the people who've already used the product could just say for how long, or people who are just starting, so that we get some feedback if at what phase you are, if you're just looking into using JSON, or whether you already use that and you have a very specific question. I mean, that may help us for future stuff, whether we should do more overview or more specific stuff. I mean, for some people, it seems they already use quite a bit, and others are not even on 12.1. Yeah, nobody's replying. Not a good question, it seems. Oh, 12.1, 12.2, okay. Just starting using, okay.
I mean, again, if people have got information on what they're doing that they prefer to share privately, that's
right.
fine too. You know how to get hold. You know, they said our email addresses are basically our first name dot last name at oracle.com.
Right.
You know, if you've got information about what you're doing that you don't want to share in a public forum, we understand that. We'd still like to get it privately if possible.
Oh yeah, yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Okay, well, we're coming up to the top of the hour here. I hope it's been a useful session for you. We'll certainly take that pivot question offline and see if we can, if we can come up with something useful. We'll take that as the opening question for the next session.
Yeah, thanks a lot for your time, the good information, good feedback.
And this time I'll try and get the recording thing right, which will keep Steve happy. And we'll be back in 2 weeks.
Thanks. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.